Hi everyone, in this tutorial we are going to take the cropped sweater pattern and a pair of socks and make a front opening cardigan or a zipper front sweater. So this cream color example right here, you can see that we have put in a separating zipper to close the front. So the second option would be no zipper. Simply hem this front opening and have a few buttons, or have this ribbing from the neck come all the way down center front to the base. So to do this cute little sweater, we are going to use the socks with the shorter ribbing. This is like 1/2 inch ribbing at the base or the top edge of the sock. We're going to use that for our waistband. So you can see here we have one piece cut and it connects right to that ribbing at the bottom. So we have a side seam connecting the front to the back, but the back is cut with the ribbon connected and the front is cut with the ribbon connected just along the waist or the base of that pattern piece. The neckline and the cuffs, we've done a matching ribbing that we had cream on hand. So I finished off the neckline and the cuffs with just a coordinating cream ribbing. And then I have a 5-inch separating zipper that I've put into the front and just folded back. So it's sewn in after I attached that neckline ribbing and then just folded back, and that covers the raw edge right in there of that sweater fabric. Now the one thing that you're gonna wanna note, or maybe you've already noticed, is that this opens in the front. So I have simply turned my pattern around so that I have the opening in the front instead of the back. So it's a front opening sweater, and that's why I've attached the zipper, or I can do ribbing to create a cardigan look. So again, this is the cropped sweater pattern and I'm doing it flipped front to back. So I have the pattern pieces. I have the full front and back and the sleeves. The sleeves I've shortened about 1 inch to allow for the ribbing because this pattern does not have ribbing around the hemline. It's just hemmed. So this is going to be 1 inch shorter. And then on the front and the back, I'm going to place these down, subtracting the seam allowance line down here at the bottom. You can ignore this pencil line. That was just from a different project. So I'm going to place this so that the seam allowance extends past the ribbing. So the ribbing is going to be right along the waist line of the base of the sweater. And because the back is designed to close and overlap, I'm actually going to cut this as my front. And it's fine that the front is, that this center back extends a little bit. We'll just trim this the width of the sock, and we're taking off that seam allowance because we don't want it to overlap in the front. And then for the back of the sweater, I am going to place this on as well, and I'll flip this over so you can see this lined up better. The back is going to be cut on the fold, and I'm going to line this up so that my ribbing is right at my seam allowance line. And then that fits right in there before I hit that heel portion, and I can cut this out. And again, this is pretty stretchy, so I'll just sort of stretch around to cut my piece, line this up so I get the whole arm's eye cut. And if it's a little bit in on this folded side, it's fine. Again, it will stretch quite a bit once it's on the doll. Then to cut the sleeves, we're going to cut the socks apart, and we will open up the sock and then place the sleeve to cut to. Now you can see here as I'm setting this on, I'm actually a little bit short for this pattern, which honestly is fine. These sleeves are pretty long and the ribbing can make up for it at the base of that wrist. So I'll just fold this up and I'll cut this as long as I can, and then we will attach that ribbing down along the wrist line. All right, so here we have the pieces cut out. You can see this is the front, which is going to be the back cut on a fold, and then we have the two back pieces, which will now be the front pieces. And then we also have two sleeves. So you can see here how this ribbing is nicely connected. So it's nice and smooth right along the base of the sweater. So now to do this, I can leave this up high so that it finishes up high at the neckline, or I could curve this back on a gentle curve so it's a cardigan edge that comes down without being pointed right at center front. So these are just design choices you can make as you're working. So on this one, you can see we've left that straight up at center back, and then we just did the zipper and attached the ribbing. For this one, I'm going to just line these up, and I'm going to curve this a little bit slightly right here, right up into that neck opening, and then I'll just use some gray binding and have that come all the way down center front. So now we're just going to take the sweater, sew these right sides together. We are going to do the shoulder seams and attach both of the arms and add the ribbing to the base of the sleeve for each sleeve. Here I have the shoulder seams sewn, and I went ahead on this one and actually pressed my seam allowance open and top stitched down just to really have that be a nice flat shoulder seam. Now I have a strip of knit fabric. This is just a really lightweight black cotton lycra, and it's cut about 1 inch wide, and I'm going to use this for the whole front around the neck and down to the waist. So center front around the neck. I'm going to fold it in half, and I'm going to sew this with right sides together from the base all the way around. So what I'm going to do first is to fold this right sides together and then sew my end and turn it right side out so that I have a finished end that's going to be lined up with my waistline seam. Okay, so I've folded that now inside. So I have a finished folded edge, and I'm going to line this up right here, and I'm just going to pin this all the way around. So this is folded with the right side out, and I'm lining up my raw edge. Now I'm going to take this over to the machine, and I'm just going to stitch this down with a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around. And when I get close to my bottom edge and I'm exactly sure how long I want this to be, I'll stop about halfway down, and then I will do the same thing on this end. I will sew straight across the short end at the correct length, and then turn it right side out and then line it back up so that I can finish stitching all the way to the bottom. All right, so then we will go ahead and attach both sleeves. So I have one sleeve attached. My black neckline binding is sewn on, and it goes all the way around. You can see there. And then I have my second sleeve, which also has just black binding, which is cut the same as the pullover sweater. Basically, I have about 1 inch wide piece of fabric that's cut just about 1/2 inch narrower than the width of the sleeve, so it stretches slightly to fit the width of the sleeve. I've just sewn that down, and then that will fold back under to create that band at the bottom of the sleeve. So I'll go ahead and attach my second arm, and then we will just sew the side seams. All right, so here we have this one all the way sewn. So the side seams are sewn, and we have the gray ribbing around the bottom. Then we're left with finishing this off. So I am going to take my seam allowance. It's extending in towards center front, and I'm going to fold this binding on top of it, and we'll top stitch it down so the seam allowance is pressed in towards center front, and that'll have this binding sit on top of our waistline ribbing, and it'll give me a nice finished edge along the front of the sweater that looks like traditional ribbing, and I could put a few buttons on here so it looked like a cardigan that would button, although it would just be worn open. Now to stabilize this, because this is pretty stretchy, I'll probably just run this under the machine with a piece of tissue paper underneath it to keep it from stretching out as I'm sewing around. And I'll use a little bit longer stitch length as I do that seam as well. So here we have this. You can see I have tissue paper. I started at the center back neckline and sewed down on top of this down to the waistline. It's easier to start here where I have fabric to grab the feed dogs in both directions and then sew down. So you can see I have a nice little top stitch right in there, and then I can just pull this tissue paper right off. And if I have any residue on the inside, I can come in and just carefully pull that out. But then I have a nice clean top stitched edge right here to have the finished front part of this sweater. To finish the front of the cardigan with the zipper, instead of just doing a line of ribbing all the way around, we're going to take the cardigan. At this point we have it all cut out. It's all sewn. The arms are connected, shoulder seams are sewn, and this front is cut from the back piece just with that squared corner edge. So we're just going to take a piece of the ribbing, and this is just a really lightweight black cotton lycra, and I have it cut about 5 inches by 1.5 inches. I'm folding it in half, and this is very similar to the Avila Aviator collar piece. It curves down slightly. I have about 1/4 inch here left for my seam allowance. So this is my raw edge. I'm going to line this up with the neckline of this opening and sew it to there all the way so that it comes right up here at center front. So then right here at center front, we're going to want to make sure that we actually have this lined up along the curve so that when that gets sewn down at 1/4 inch and it's turned right side out, that will cause that neckline ribbing to come down to a point. So we're going to go ahead and just stitch this down around the neckline. All right, so I have this neckline ribbing attached all the way around, and I'm going to now work to just put in my separating zipper. This separating zipper is a little bit too long. It's a 6-inch separating zipper. So I'm going to line up the bottom and work my way up to the top, and I will just trim off and fold back the point at which it meets my neckline seam. Now to attach this very evenly between both sides, especially because I have stripes that are going to want to line up in the front, I'm going to use my quilter's tape. This is 1/8 inch wide quilter's tape, and I'm just going to push this down right along the edge. I'm not stretching the sock, I'm just pushing it flat, and my neckline seam allowance is pressed down. So I'm going to bring this all the way up here, tear that off. We'll peel off this paper backing, and then I'm going to put the zipper face down right along there. So I'm just going to zip this up all the way. I'm going to line up my ribbing with the base of the zipper, and I'm just going to press this down right onto this tape. So that'll be nice and secure, and then when I have this stitched down, my stripes are nice and even, and I'll use this to line up the other side. Then we're going to just sew this down with the zipper foot as close to the zipper teeth as possible. I'll stitch this down on the wrong side, and then we'll flip it back so that the sweater fabric folds over the stitching. Now you're only going to want to stitch up to this neckline seam, and then we will trim that off and fold back the zipper so that the zipper stops right here at this neckline seam. Okay, so we have the zipper stitched down, and you can see I just folded that a little bit right there as it meets that neckline seam. So then on the wrong side of the zipper, I've marked with the yellow pencil here the opposite side to make sure that I turn that back at the exact same point so my zipper is even at center front, especially up at the top of the neckline. So as this comes around on the inside, I'm going to trim that off, and we will top stitch this a little bit just to hold that neck binding and the zipper right here where the neck binding joins this seam. So I can go ahead and place this down while it's zipped to make sure that it lines up on the opposite side as well. And we can look at our stripes, make sure that we have the same stripes. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So the 8th stripe is right under my neckline seam. So I'll go ahead and place my quilter's tape on this side as well. And then we'll line up the opposite side of the zipper, just like this, to line up with this side of the jacket, and then double check to make sure our stripes are lined up. All right, so we have the zipper sewn down on both sides, and then I'm just gonna come in here and I'm going to just trim this off a little bit. And these plastic coils are pretty easy to cut through, so that's not that big of a deal to trim through that. Then I'm just gonna place this down. I can use quilter's tape or a pin. And then on the front side, I'll just top stitch from my shoulder seam down to this center front point just to hold the end of the zipper down. And then on the inside, that zipper tape covers all the raw edges. So it looks fine, you don't have to top stitch that. I like the look of this free, not top stitched down with the sweater knit. You might want to just secure with a few stitches at the ribbing though, just to hold that down. So it has a nice finished look down at the base. And you could do that with a few hand stitches or a couple top stitches through both layers on your machine. And then you can see on this gold version, the cream color one, this was with a 5-inch zipper. So this zipper stopped right at the seam line, and I just folded the excess zipper tape right back inside there. So it's stitched down on the inside, but I didn't need to trim it, and the 5-inch zipper was the perfect length. And there you have the finished little striped cardigan or sweater that zips up the front. We also have the stripes matching up nicely on the sides, which is another thing that you'll want to pay attention to. So then this one goes together nicely. We have very cute there. We've got the coil zipper. We have this one with a metal teeth zipper. And then the other one that is just a simple binding up and down the front. So there's 3 open center front opening cardigans made from the cropped sweater pattern. So I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial and you are ready to get started making your own little cardigans out of a pair of socks.